Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source here in the Junk Be Gone studio. We appreciate you joining us today. Tennessee walloped Vanderbilt last night, 88-53, and it actually wasn't the biggest lead of the night. It was a complete demolished job on the Commodores. We'll obviously get into that. We'll talk about where the NCAA, they previewed their bracket. Where do they have the Vols seated? What does that mean? We'll look at that. We'll look at all kinds of stuff today. Deep dive into the Tennessee team, minutes that they're playing, the what they've looked like at home versus the road versus quad one opponents. Where's the one area of the floor where they're not getting a lot of shots from, and could that come back to bite them? That kind of stuff. And then we'll also get into football. So we got a packed show. Let's get right into it. First segment of our show brought to you by our friends at Junk Be Gone. This week I was looking at my garage, and it's basically become a place for a car. It's gone from a place for a car to just a jam-packed storage unit, unfortunately. I wish it was just a place for a car. So it's time to clean that up and haul stuff out. When I've got to clean stuff up and haul stuff out, I call Junk Be Gone. You should too. No one helps with spring or pre-spring cleaning like Junk Be Gone. JunkBeGone.biz to learn more about this great local family-owned company. All right, let's welcome in the first wave of panelists for the day right down here. Jimmy Himes, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks to Will West right there. Mark Pancratz, former D1 basketball player, former assistant coach for Tennessee. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you, Chuck Cavaleris, for being here. Appreciate you for being here. We got two more waiting in the wings, so it is a packed show. I promise you that. When you hit 14 three-pointers, hold the other guy to 33% from the floor, it's going to be a good night. When you have five guys in double digits and you lead by 41 at any one point, it's going to be a good night. When the other team turns it over 19 times, it's going to be a good night. When all that stuff happens, it's a great night. And that's what happened yesterday as Tennessee just absolutely sunk the Commodores. Mark Pancratz, we always do takeaways. What were your takeaways from that one?
Well, I mean, you mentioned, you start out shooting the ball the way that we did, moving the basketball, the tempo was there, the crispness on the offensive side. Vanderbilt, just the turnovers got them. But when you have 28 assists and 7 turnovers, yes, you got to shoot the ball well to get the assist, but the way that we moved the ball was just different than what we saw in some of our losses where we got a little stagnant. We moved the ball well last night and obviously made shots, which helps. Now,
Vanderbilt gave Tennessee quite a game in Nashville, so you're playing at home. How much of this, in your opinion, there's no way to gauge it, how much of this, in your opinion, was the butt-chewing they got from Rick Barnes, which had to come after Texas A&M? How much of this was you're on your home floor and you're against a bad opponent?
Yeah, I think that all goes into it. And he didn't play well against Vanderbilt at their place.
Yeah. So, all right, other takeaways.
To me, it's when Josiah Jordan-James and Santiago Vescovi are playing well on the same night, look out. They are really good. It's only the fourth game this year, if my research is correct, where both of them had double digits on the same night. The others, they beat Illinois, which is a quality team, and they beat Kentucky on the road. And then you got Vanderbilt, and then the other one's Tarleton State. When those two guys are playing, because you can pretty much count on Kennett and Ziegler, right?
Yeah.
The next most reliable guy to me is Jonas Adu. Mm-hmm. But if you can get Vescovi, who broke out of his slump, and James to play at a pretty good level and be productive, I think Tennessee is as an outstanding team, and they may wiggle their way into a #1 seed if they keep playing like that.
They used the bench too, right? No starter played more than 24 minutes. I thought that was great growth on Barnes' part. I thought that Tennessee utilizing good. It was good to see Carr. It was good to see these guys.
He
right?
watches the show.
You did. That's what it is.
Then you really won't like the segment we're doing in a couple. So,
but it was good to see these young guys get an opportunity. To me, I always look at Nick Saban, right? They blow everybody out. Second half, he's got his second string, third string in. By the end, he's got his walk-ons. And then those guys, by the time it's their time to start, they have some real game minutes. Tennessee did that last night. We saw Carr. We saw so many of these other guys that we haven't seen this season. Mm-hmm. And I think, one, you rest your starters. Two, we get some real game minutes for these guys that at some point in time, if you're going to make a deep tournament run, they're probably going to be called upon.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me was where they're sharing the ball. I mean, it's the first time in 3 years you had 3 players with at least 5 assists. And when Tennessee's doing that, and Jimmy's right, that's what I had down too. Vescovi, what was he on 3-pointers? 4 or 5?
4 or 5.
When he's doing that, I think James also plays better too, it looks like to me. And then you saw what ESPN Analytics, I noticed this before the game, gave Tennessee a 99% chance of winning. I think it was 100.
Yeah, they undershot it.
They undershot it.
And we got some stats that are popping up here for you. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, to Jimmy's point, and what Chuck mentioned too, I looked it up. In our wins, those top three, I've said all year, the differentiator is going to be the other two guys. The other three guys, Ken Vescovi, Josiah, Gainey's had a couple nights. Those guys, what are their performances going to be? Because that takes us to the next level. If you look at in our wins, the top three guys in Connect, Ziegler, and Adu, they've scored 60% of our points. In our losses, they've scored 75% of our points. So you've not gotten the Josiahs, the Vescovis, those other guys stepping up. And we've scored 66 points in our losses versus 88 points in our wins. When you've got more of those guys, those veterans in Vescovi and Josiah stepping up and playing, that's the difference of this team. This team's got three guys that are pretty doggone consistent, but it's those other guys that showed up last night that Vanderbilt, whether they got a guy or two, they don't have the depth to withstand what Tennessee brought last night.
And John, a quick note on that with Vescovi and James, and Tennessee's 3 SEC losses, they combined for 5 points, 9 points, and 12. And so that to Mark's point about you've got to have some other pieces that come through. And when they play well, I just think they're a much more dangerous team.
I would also just kind of caution the fan base. Look, that's not a lot of – you hit 45% beyond the arc. You might not do that again the rest of the season, right? So you hit a lot of shots. What happens with this offense when you aren't hitting shots, when you're shooting 38%? Not poorly. That's good for a team, but it's not the same where you're going to blow somebody out. Also, not everybody's Vanderbilt. Tennessee was clearly just better than they are.
Truly.
Well, we'll tell you what, we've seen it. We miss shots and we end up scoring in the 60s versus in the 80s when we're hitting shots and we're winning. And I think that's where the coaching staff has to continue to spread the floor out, run their ball screens, attack downhill, as opposed to what you saw when we've missed some shots. We get more stationary and we become easier to guard. That's when you got to push the tempo. You got to spread the floor out. You got to attack downhill. And that's when you've seen Adu really evolve because he can pick and pop a little bit, but, man, he can get out of ball screens and he can roll and he can finish at the rim, and it just makes the defense really put them in a tough position.
And more, the people are realizing Adu is really the most improved player in the SEC over the past couple of years, would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
And then you got Ziegler, who may be the defensive player of the year, and he may be an all-SEC point guard. And then you put that with Connect, it may be the player of the year in the SEC. That's why you can hum along with that. And meanwhile, guys, Rick Barnes is 2 wins away from 800. That's some pretty strong stuff.
Good deal. That's the kind of segment I like where I just duck out of the way and let you guys talk. Perfect. Easy for me. Let me tell you what's coming up on the show, on the docket here. Should Tennessee be using the bench more? Can you tell that whole thing was put together before they won by 100 last night? But we'll talk about their bench minutes overall. We'll take a deep dive into this Tennessee team with numbers and facts, predictions for their last 6 games. Well, the last 4 are going to be tough. Heupel needs to hire 2 coaches. We'll talk about that. The delay in the lawsuit, looks like a misspelling. Gee, I wonder what idiot named John Pennington did the graphic. Delay in the lawsuit, is that good for Tennessee? Is that a good sign? A 2-minute warning for college football, an expanded NCAA tournament, and a 9-game SEC schedule. We'll cover all those that came up this week. And then SEC football win totals, the over-unders are out from the gambling services. We'll break those down as well. It is a jam-packed one. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. If you're going to start a do-it-yourself project or a large-scale building job, I keep telling you to start it at A.G. Hines Company, and there's a reason I do that. They were just awarded Supplier of the Year by the Associated General Contractors. Folks, this is a tremendous company. There's a reason they've been around for more than a century. That should be all I need to say. They've been around for more than a century. That's a good business. aghines.com to learn more. Right in the heart of downtown Knoxville, A.G. Hines Company. All right, welcome in the next 2 members of our panel. Right here, Vince Farrar, thanks for being with us.
Hey, John.
And right down there, back from a long hiatus, Dave Hooker from offthehooksports.com. You also have a book.
I do have a book.
You've written a book about the Tennessee 1998 National Championship?
Yes. That happened to be the year I graduated, which...
Rub that in.
Yeah, most people would have been like a doctor. But I took the 6-year plan and decided to write a book about it. But it's more about the football team and some behind-the-scenes stories that I enjoyed writing. It was a lot of fun.
Inside stories. We've got we're going to have a reminder at the bottom of the screen so you can follow that to offthehooksports.com. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. Yesterday, the NCAA Selection Committee revealed how they viewed the teams around the country and how they would set up the tournament if it were starting yesterday, or starting today, since they said it yesterday. Let's take a look at how they seeded the top 16 teams. You see Tennessee wound up as the number 6 seed overall. That put them as a 2 seed. And they got the Midwest, which we talked about last week. Detroit's actually the closest of all the regionals. You could do Los Angeles, Boston, Dallas, or Detroit, and Detroit is closer to Knoxville. But they put them, if this seeding held, they would be in the same area with Purdue, Tennessee, Baylor, San Diego State. The other 2 seeds, North Carolina, who they've played, Kansas, who they've played. The 1 seeds, Purdue, who they've played, UConn, Houston, and Arizona. And then you see the 3s and the 4s as well. In case you're wondering, I just said who they've played. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Tennessee, 3-3 against the other 15 top 16 teams in the country. They won at Wisconsin earlier in the year. They beat Illinois at home. They beat Alabama. They got another game with Alabama on the road coming up. Lost on a neutral site to Purdue, lost on a neutral site to Kansas, and then got that really bad start at North Carolina and were making a run until Dalton Knecht turned his ankle. But 3-3 against the very best teams in the country, so that's nothing to sneeze at. Let's take a look at one more thing. We always talk about you want to be top 25 in offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency. Those are the teams that typically make it. This chart simply, if you're going up and down, the best defensive teams are at the top. So you see Houston is actually above Tennessee. You see that Auburn is above Tennessee, and you see Iowa State is above Tennessee. If you look at the other, and I don't know if that's the X or the Y, I'm not a math guy, but if you're looking at the one that goes left to right, that's the offensive rating, and there are several teams better than Tennessee. The good news is Alabama and Illinois are better than Tennessee offensively, but you've already beaten both of those teams. And then finally, let's take a look at where Jerry Palm and Joe Lunardi have them. Obviously, they put them in the same thing that the NCAA committee did. That'd be a 2 seed in the Midwest, but Lunardi has them playing Colgate with Colorado State and TCU waiting for them in Charlotte. Jerry Palm has them in Memphis playing Quinnipiac, and then either Washington State or Rick Barnes' old Texas team in the second round out there in Memphis. Mark, I'll start with you. How do you feel about the number 6 overall seed? Should they be higher? Should they be lower? Is that right?
I think it's about right. And I think where you're surrounded by North Carolina and a Kansas team that both beat you. So I think being in that 6th position is about where they should be.
Dave, thoughts on the seeding?
The seeding in and of itself, I thought Tennessee was a 5-6, possibly 7 team all along. So I got no problem with 6 right now at all.
Gentlemen?
I think it's about right. I think what stands out and what got a lot of fan reaction was being there with Purdue, who they had lost to. And they struggled early in the year when they went up against those dominant bigs. So I think that would maybe make some fans nervous if you would potentially match up with them like in a regional final. But I think 2 and a 2 seed as a number 6 overall is good right now. But I wouldn't rule them going up or down just a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with the 6 seed. That's seemed to be where they deserve to be based on what they've done. They've had a couple of tough losses along the way. They've had some really good wins along the way. But I think given all the evidence and the stats that they use, I think a 6 seed's appropriate.
Path-wise, again, we talked about it a little last week. You believe more are you hot? What are the matchups? But in terms of fan travel, Detroit is a little easier than the other places. So,
and I like the fact that you play Purdue again. I think there's
you like that. Okay.
I like the veterans of this ball club and a Ziegler type MO that says, "Hey, this team beat us, and we get to play them again, and we got really nothing to lose because they already beat us." And yes, they've got a dominant big. He's going to be Player of the Year in the country. But I like the fact I'd rather play them than a UConn or Houston. Yeah. I'd rather have another matchup up against Purdue.
Another thing with Purdue is because they've had tournament disappointments, they're going to be carrying some pressure and expectation as well. So
that could be an interesting regional final. Those two programs that have a history of not getting where people think they're going to get to. To me, you're playing it. If you're worried about playing Purdue in a regional final, I think you've had a good tournament because they haven't put you in the Elite Eight for only for the second time ever.
That's right.
Right, and maybe I'm the only one, but I like the UConn matchup of potentially being up north. I mean, that's a basketball crazy area, so just to get more exposure for the program, I think that would make a lot of sense. I realize Detroit's slightly closer, but it's not too bad getting up to.
When you talk about big guys, I don't want to face UConn. UConn's got some bigs. They got some dogs at the guard position. They're battle tested.
They won the tournament last year.
I don't want a piece of UConn.
What about FAU? Now they had been in Tennessee's line on a couple of these things in terms of a second round matchup. If you saw a team like an FAU who knocked you out last year, I don't think they're the same team they were last year, but they may get on the same roll. Is that would you want to see that time team? You'd like to see Purdue again. Let me give you that as an example. If you saw FAU again, the team that booted you out, you'd want that.
100%.
Yeah, I'd rather play FAU in a rematch.
Yeah, I think that wasn't the question, but yeah, I think I would too.
I think I'm on USF Bulls today for potentially first place in the conference. But I'll make a little case on Dallas though. There's a that's a very transplant heavy market. There's a big Tennessee fan base in that Dallas-Fort Worth.
But are we to the point that if Tennessee is going to make a run, they're going to have to beat some of those elite teams like UConn, and they're going to have to step up? If that's the next step for Rick Barnes, I mean, it feels like we just make the excuse he doesn't make the Final Four, but isn't that the next step? Doesn't that have to happen with him for his legacy?
I wouldn't disagree with that. Yeah, we've made that case before, that it is what it is once you get to tournament time. Personally, this looks like a great team. We've talked about on the radio with Will West that I think this team has a better Final Four shot for its offense, its defense. You've got Dalton Connect who can take over. You've got other guys, 3 other guys who may take over on a given night. All those reasons. I still would guess that this team ends in the Sweet 16 based on Barnes' history. That's if you made me put money on it, that's what I'm going to do. And I know that's going to make people mad, but that's where I would be at this point. Yeah. Where are you at this point?
Well,
You go to Elite Eight with this team or past it?
Can they get to the Elite Eight with
Not
this
can
team?
they, will they?
Yes. I'm going to go Elite Eight because I think Vescovy and James are going to continue to be better contributors than they were earlier.
Okay.
So,
will they?
I would say yes, at least the Elite Eight. A step forward.
At least. There we go.
Will they?
Elite Eight.
Will they?
I want to go Elite Eight, but when you start talking about making financial bets, and you were joking about earlier, I'm like, that's my mortgage. So I would have to say Sweet 16, but I really want to say Elite Eight.
I'm big on history. I just look at the history.
Will the Tennessee football team win at Florida?
Oh, wait a minute. Exactly. And I always say no, and they never do. Exactly. All right. When we come back, Rick Barnes emptied his bench yesterday. We had a whole plan to talk about the fact that he hasn't been playing his bench, and we'll show you what he's done for the year, and it's basically what he does every year, and that's bench minutes are pretty low. Does he need to play guys more? Yes, it was good yesterday. Should that happen more often? And if so, who should play? And if he's not, is he creating flight risks for the transfer portal? Come on back on the Sports Source. That's it. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Parkside Cabin Rentals. You know how to make a special event more special? You upgrade the location of that event. I mean, you can book a hotel room. That's great. But if you're going to the Smoky Mountains this spring or this summer, why not get your own place where you pick the amenities that you want? You can do that. You can pick the cabin that you want at ParksideCabinRentals.com. They've got all their layouts right there on their website. You can get the locations. You can see photos of the places. It's like, that's the one. That speaks to me. I need one with 3 bedrooms. I need one with a pool table. I need one with jacuzzi. I need one with a creek view. Just plop in your choices. Boom, they pop up. ParksideCabinRentals.com. Check them out today. All right, let me tell you what our poll question is for today. We're going to get you involved here. Take your smartphone out and click on that little QR code there, and you can tell us how you feel about this. Also, you can go to sportsource.tv/polls and vote there. But we talked a couple weeks ago on radio about the Final Four and Tennessee's Final Four chances and Final Four. And somebody got me on Twitter and said, why are you talking about that? The SEC regular season championship is what everybody's after. I'm like, no, I think they're after the Final Four. And there was a little back and forth. So I thought, well, let's just put it to the test. What matters most to you this season? SEC regular season title, SEC tournament title, which I can't believe anybody voted for that, or a deep NCAA tournament run. I have a feeling this is going to remain a route. But if you agree with the other person who's like, nope, you get to hang a banner and we'll be talking about championships forever and that's more important than a tournament run, go ahead and vote it. Let us know your thoughts. All right. Let's take a look here. Top seed. These are the top 16 teams that were seeded yesterday. These are their bench minutes for the year. And they are ranked. Auburn is 5th in the country. Out of 360 teams, they rank 5th. 44% of their time comes from the bench. Houston, Alabama, Illinois, UConn, Purdue, Marquette, Iowa State, San Diego State, Duke, Baylor, Arizona. There's Tennessee. And this is typical. This is Rick Barnes typically gets a smaller rotation and doesn't give a ton of minutes to his bench. We do this every year. Tennessee, ahead of 3 of those schools, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Kansas. But again, out of 360 schools, Tennessee ranks 294th in terms of bench minutes. 25% of their team minutes come off the bench. And let's look at the players specifically. There's the way that breaks down. And this does not count last night's minutes. But going into that game, Ziegler, Connect, James, Vescovy, Adu, Gainey, and Meshack all had more than 400 minutes. Awaka, 281, and then the other 4 guys, they're less. All others under 5 minutes on the year. My question, Will West. You said in the first segment, you like what they did last night. Should they be doing more of that? And if so, with whom? Who should be getting more minutes?
Absolutely. They have to do more of that. I think it should be a Waka. I don't mind an 8-man rotation. I think you could give a Waka more minutes, but you also need to have someone that's going to be the backup plan for Zakai Ziegler. A guy that defends as hard as he does, at some point in time during a tournament game, he's going to get in foul trouble. So what's the plan from there? When Adu gets in foul trouble, we've seen for the Mississippi State game, other games, it doesn't go well for Tennessee. So at the end of the day, to me, it's less about who in minutes, although it is who in minutes. It's more about when Adu gets in foul trouble because it's going to happen, when Ziegler gets in foul trouble because it's going to happen. What is the backup plan? You got to have some level of risk mitigation there in my mind if you're Barnes.
Chuck, I always say we put this number up every year, some number like it, where I go and do this, and you look at Rick Barnes' track record in the tournament, it's not great. It's not like he's horrible. It's not great. There are a lot of times he comes in under what people expect. But I think there may be a correlation. You wear your guys out. They wear down toward the end of the year. Just a theory. Could be wrong. Should they be playing more of their bench guys? And if so, who?
Well, I tell you what, as much talent as this team has, you would think, yeah. Of course, you had the luxury yesterday of such the big lead. If you didn't put them in then, I started to text you, boy, if he doesn't play some guys now, we got a segment to talk to. I tell you what, I wrote down Cameron Carr. I mean, he's just got something in it. I know he's going to have to play good defense, but he just kind of glides out there. He's 6'5" and a guard. Also, DeLeon. I'm going to get him more minutes, guys. I've been saying that with Estrella.
Estrella's had some good.
But Estrella now, if the folks at home don't know, he's been dealing with some lower leg issues, or there's been something going on there. But those 3 guys, when they come out there, it's like they look like SEC players. They look like they can help you win ball games, but you got to find a way to get them in without. And look, and you're talking about Ziegler. Look how hard he works on defense. He may be the defensive player of the year. He's working on both ends of the court. You got to give him some time off.
Yeah. My issue was last week when he plays a full game in a game you lose by 16 at A&M. It's like, to me, that's give him a rest at some point. But on the other side, you're the 6th best team in the country according to the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee. You're neck and neck with the leader in the SEC right now for the regular season title. Do they need to be playing more bench minutes?
But as your poll is going to show, it's about the NCAA tournament run, and that's what we got to keep in mind. It's about the marathon, not the sprint, and so I do think you got to be playing guys more minutes. To me, the guy that fits the Barnes mold that has had minutes deteriorate over the last probably 3 weeks is Meshack.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy that at times he was playing some backup point guard if it's not going to be Vescovy. I think it's got to be Meshack because he fits the Barnes mold. Carr, they're super high on Carr. They think Carr is going to be an NBA talent by the time he's done in 2 or 3 years. But him and DeLeon, they don't play defense. They turn the basketball over. They're not tough being able to get through screens. And so they're not at Barnes' level on that defensive end. And you've seen a couple times when DeLeon's been in, guys are coming off floppy screens, down screens, and the deliverance of the pass is just late. He's not there yet. Now, you could say, well, maybe it's because he's not getting the playing time, but he's practicing every day against these guys. So he should be there, especially if it's one of the better defensive teams in the country. That should correlate to the game. It's not. So for me, Meshack and Awaka are the two guys that should be getting a little bit more minutes.
Let me ask you this: and look, everybody's a flight risk in the current transfer portal era, but are you creating more flight risks with some of these guys by not giving them more minutes than the minutes we showed a few seconds ago?
I think it's less in basketball than it is in football, because in basketball,
there's not
you
as much
can go
money
get
thrown around for one.
that, and a guy can immediately impact a team as quickly as possible. I don't think anybody's looking at Freddie DeLeon and saying he's going to impact my team and it's a difference maker next year. So they can go get a mid-major guy that averaged 16 a game for the same money NIL-wise that they would offer DeLeon. So I don't think it's as big of a risk. But we did see Tennessee lose a backup point guard during the offseason to SMU because he wasn't getting playing time.
And you're going to have some spots open up next season, right? I mean, that's why I would be able to
Actually,
stay
Josiah
on.
Jordan James and Santiago Vescovi are planning to come back again. So they've appealed.
See, there were 1,000 players that entered the portal in basketball last year. So that's 1,000 players. But I think these guys know that you bide your time, you're a freshman, and then it's your turn to make the most of it.
Mark, should they be worrying about that as a coaching staff?
No, because of the transfer portal. I mean, I talked to Forbes at Wake Forest earlier last week, and he talked about they've had 2 ACC players of the year that were in the transfer portal that they got. And now people are starting to pursue them as potential places to transfer, like a Connect, because they've had success with it. So if you have success in the portal, you're going to be attracting guys that have had success at the college level that now can complain, as opposed to a DeLeon in a car. They think they look really good, but it's not translated to when the lights come on. And in the portal, you can go get those guys.
Well, you can, but let's remember, Dalton Connect is one of how many that they've brought in, and he's the first one to really take off. I mean, Victor Bailey was supposed to be spectacular.
Key last year?
Yes, Key from Indiana State. You had Anasicki's brother came in here. So, and they've gone and gotten some of these mid-major guys before, and it hasn't paid off. So that's questionable. All right. When we come back, let's deep dive into some UT basketball numbers. How are the Vols at the rim? How do their home stats match their road stats, match their quad one stats? Much more. And what's their record going to be over the last 6 games? Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. For many years, I've been telling you about these folks, and for a good reason. They do a great job, but they're also good people. The Haynes family puts a lot of pride in what they do, and right now, they have an opening on their team for an experienced administrator. One of their administrators is retiring after 20-plus years with the company, which tells you a lot about the job and the company. After 20-plus years, she's retiring, which means they have an opening. Call Southeast Termite and Pest Control this week if you have some experience there and have an interest in being an administrator with southeasttermite.com. And, of course, if you've got pest control needs, that's who I use. You should, too. All right. Let's take a look at this graphic. The one you need, what this is doing, it's breaking down Tennessee on the season. Doesn't count yesterday, but it shows the percentage, that field goal attempt percentage, and then you got field goal percentage over beside it. Field goal attempt percentage from different areas of the floor. At the rim, in the paint, mid-range twos, above the break threes, corner threes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The orange underline is there at the rim. The interesting thing there, you see Tennessee shooting 66.3% at the rim, shots at the rim. That's top 83% in the country. But only 27% of their shots come underneath the basket. That's 23rd. That's the bottom 23% of the country. They aren't getting a ton of shots at the rim. Mark, is that an issue moving forward?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always want to be getting closer to the rim. To be
Well,
able
I mean, it speaks to something we've talked about all year. Bigger teams give them trouble.
Bigger teams, and then also when our offense gets stagnant, we get into that one-on-one shooting deep threes late in the clock instead of attacking down rim, or attacking downhill. And so, yeah, it absolutely is a big thing to watch.
All right, let's take a look at how they do. People talk about consistency. I think there are a lot of fan bases that would say, I want my team to be more consistent. This shows Tennessee's numbers. On the left are their typical numbers at home. Then you got them on the road, and then you got them against quad one. And the good news here is, look at those green numbers. Darker green is the higher of the percentile. Like, for example, assists per 40 minutes. They're absolutely best in the country there. They're in the top 100%. They're way up at the country with 19.7 per game. That drops to top 75% when they go on the road. But the good news here is they still pretty much stay in the dark green when they're playing quad one teams. But I've got some stars here. Let's start at the bottom. Personal fouls per 40 minutes. They're pretty good at home. This is not a surprise. They're good. They don't get a lot of fouls called on them at home. They go on the road, woof. They go from the top 81% to the bottom 13%. And then against quad one teams this year, those big teams they faced, they're absolutely horrible. They got 21 personal foul calls against them. Other places where they drop off from home to the road, their steals per game drop from almost 9 to 6.5. Offensive rebounds drop off, assists drop off. Interestingly, they actually have 83 points per game versus 81 points per game on the road versus home. But it's good that in the quad one, once you get into the tournament, when you're playing the big boys, their numbers are pretty good. But the drop-off is interesting, and the personal foul thing, I think, again, speaks to the size inside.
Yeah, and same with the defensive rebounding piece of it. Yeah. You're giving up a bunch of rebounds to the interior. But that's, what we did to Duke last year in the NCAA tournament, we out-physicaled them. And now the MO is to go back at us and be the more physical team. Those top teams can do that. They've got that type of skill set. They've got that depth. And it's something that we got to watch out. You get in the NCAA tournament, you get Pat Adams on the call, calling all those ticky-tack fouls, you may be in trouble. But yeah, those are telltale.
Well, in terms of getting the team in the mud, that was what Tennessee wanted to do last year. You saw an example of that in reverse with South Carolina this year. They just slowed you down, got it in the mud, you couldn't win it. So anyway, let's take one more look, one more graphic here I got for you. Vols in the SEC. Here are the current SEC standings. Tennessee is at 9-3. Alabama's 10-2. Tennessee has jumped over Auburn, over South Carolina, over Kentucky. The Vols have Missouri on the road, then Texas A&M. Then it gets tough. The last 4 games: Auburn, at Alabama. Then you've got Carolina on the road and Kentucky at home. That's a tough last 6, especially that last 4. Mark Pancratz. I'm not going to ask you if they're going to win the conference, but I will ask you, what's their record going to be over the last 6 games?
Well, for one, you got to win these next 2. You have to. South Carolina's lost 2 in a row. I think they're starting to come back to reality a little bit. I still think you end up going 2-2. I think you'll get Auburn here at home, and then Alabama, and then Kentucky. I think those will be tough ones.
Okay, very good. Mark Pancratz, thank you very much. Always appreciate you coming in here. We'll see you next week. We'll be talking, Josh Ward will be hosting next week, so Josh Ward will be talking to you, previewing a very big Rick Barnes, Bruce Pearl game. Those games, that's become Tennessee's biggest rival, football or basketball, I think, at this point, Bruce Pearl. All right, Mark, thank you. And when we come back, Josh Heupel's looking for a couple of assistant coaches. Is there reason to be concerned that the guy took a lateral job to Michigan? Should Tennessee be giving out longer-term contracts if that's the current currency of the land? Come on back, we'll discuss on The Sports Source. Welcome back to The Sports Source. The segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. The Downtown Knoxville Boat Show is coming up February 29th through March 3rd. But boat show incentives are already available at Madisonville Marine. We're talking 2024 Skeeter ZXRs, 2024 Godfrey pontoons, 2024 Crevalle boats, on and on and on. You pick the model, you get a quote, you figure out your payments. Do it all right there at madmarine.com, or get down and see them. See my friends Joe Special and the team at Highway 411 North in Madisonville. All right, let's remind folks of the poll we're doing right now, so you can click on the little QR code with your phone there, and it does look like the route I anticipated. So I hope the person who was tweeting with me earlier is watching today. No one cares about your regular season. That's just the sport. It's all about the NCAA tournament. Gentlemen, everyone expected running back coach Jerry Mack to leave for a job with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But then linebackers coach Brian Jean-Marie left this week for a position with Michigan. Now, he's coached up there before. And he got a 3-year contract, something that Tennessee only does with their coordinators so far. First of all, let's just start with, how concerned are you? I mean, Josh Heupel lost one coach his first year, one coach his second year. Now this is the first time he's had 2 coaches leave in the same offseason. How concerned are you about those guys and replacing them with the right person? Vince.
Yeah, I wouldn't be concerned as of yet because, like you mentioned, this is the first time it's happened where there's been more than one. In fact, 2 of them have gone to the National Football League, and then one took a head coaching job.
Yeah,
so really there's not enough of a track record for me to say, look what's happening. It's also kind of the landscape today of college athletics. So if you get more changes, that'd be a little bit different story, but not yet.
I'm more interested in, and I wasn't clear, it's a crummy question. More interested in, are you concerned about the specific 2 that left at all? Does that cause any problems, or no?
No, I would say now there's not, at this point, there's not as deep a pool, I think, of guys you can bring in, but I'm sure there will be interest in it. No, I think you can get guys in there to to fit what Hypo wants to do, I don't think it's a huge difference.
Typically, running back coach, linebacker coach, you need those guys to be hosses in terms of recruiting.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thoughts, Dave? Any concerns?
Not really, because I don't think either one of them were elite recruiters. So, I mean, you're right. That's the position you put guys in to be elite recruiters, and neither one of them were really that. They were okay. And I think that Tennessee actually can upgrade at both of those positions. I believe firmly, and I was looking just now over the list of guys that they've recruited, and it's not a who's who. It's not an incredible group of guys. We're talking about some Arian Carters. We're talking about Dylan Sampsons. We're talking about James Pierce. But other than that, it's a bunch of guys that you need a milk bottle to find.
Well, I just wonder if this is an opportunity. How many ace recruiters do you have on this staff? And can you go find one at this point? The problem is, as Vince mentioned, it is kind of late in the game to go pluck somebody off another staff.
It is, but
if they're a recruiting ace.
Right. But as we've seen at Alabama, you can, if you maybe have not signed that contract just yet. So there may be some guys out there that are still free that you could pull away. That would not surprise me at all.
Let me ask you guys this. The 3-year contract deal. These schools are making so much money. It's what's on one more year guaranteed. If you've got an assistant that you want to keep, well, you don't want to do this. Well, it's the cost of doing business. I mean, the cost of Brian Jean-Marie, giving him one more guaranteed year, let's compare that to Tennessee's average legal bills in a year. Okay? I mean, they've got money. So I'm not concerned that they can't pay the guy. To me, I would just look at it and say, do business as business is being done. And if teams are luring your guys away with 3-year deals, it's not like they gave him a 5-year deal. Okay, I understand that. You're giving a 2, he wants a 3, they're offering a 3, give him a 3. And I just mean that in general, whoever the coach is, it seems to me that if you're serious about it and you want to be the best of the best, I don't let somebody else give my guys a better contract to lure them away.
I agree with that, but I'm going to play devil's advocate just for the fun of it.
That's my role on this show.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Sorry. All right, so devil's advocate is if you have to suddenly fire a nincompoop like Butch Jones, you really are accepting, if you could do it your way with 3-year contracts, you're accepting basically 2 head coaching salaries that you have to pay off eventually. $1 million a coordinator. Then you start getting
unless they're giving out money in Chick-fil-A bags, then you don't have to pay them anything.
You're perfectly good. You just give that out all day long. So I do think you're getting to the point where fiscally maybe it's not responsible, but I can't argue with you that, if they're using Sunoco gas, use Sunoco gas.
Well, I mean, I love the fact Tennessee's going to be fiscally responsible.
This is the university that was nationally known for just handing out dollars to people not coaching. So there's some irony in that.
And I'm not saying, I mean, you do go down that road. I just have a feeling if this is what got him away, you're going to see more and more teams do this with 3-year deals, and that's what everybody's going to be doing. Yeah. But, and granted, if you give somebody a 3-year deal, that means every other assistant's going to say, I want a 3-year deal. But your thoughts, Vince?
Yeah, I'd want to see the numbers on just how many schools are actually doing this. I haven't done a deep dive on that. I know that's the trend, but just how much is it? What about the Power Fives? How many of those are actually doing that? And if that is the cost of doing business, then eventually you have to adjust to it. But especially with the volatility and fluidity of coaching and athletics and everything. But I would kind of wait before I totally went across the board and did it.
Very good. Go ahead quickly.
Really quickly, I think that Josh Heupel knows Danny White's phone number. And if he'd have wanted a 3-year contract for the right dude, he would have got one.
Okay.
I don't know that.
You don't think there's anything he wants that he doesn't get? What Joshy wants, Joshy gets?
Probably every once in a while. I just think if he really wanted to retain one of these coaches.
Now I'm talking more in the big picture theory of this.
Yeah, I'm talking, if he wanted to retain one of these guys, he would have picked up the phone. Danny might have been, okay.
Well, for all we know, that they're saying, hey, Michigan's getting him. We don't have to get rid of him.
I think there's a chance of that.
Okay. He's pretty close with Tim Banks. I don't know about. All right. When we come back, everyone's still waiting for a judge to rule on the injunction case involving UT and the NCAA, or involving the state of Tennessee, parentheses UT, and the NCAA. So, is it a good sign or a bad sign for UT that this thing's kind of dragging along? We'll discuss that next. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Daniel Hood Roofing. Are your shingles older than they should be? The extremes in weather in East Tennessee do damage to the waterproofing material on shingles. High heat, bitter cold, more rain than Seattle, and that is literal, look it up. That takes a toll on shingles. Don't wait until you see a stain on your ceiling to think, oh, I might have water damage up there. Get a free inspection of your roof right now. Call Daniel Hood Roofing today or visit them online at danielhoodroofing.com. All right, Judge Clifton Corker, my favorite name in all the world right now. He heard arguments from the state of Tennessee Attorney General and the NCAA on Tuesday. He said he would make a decision on whether to grant an injunction in short order, but there's been no announcement as of 11 a.m. starting this show today. So, Vince, I will start with you. Is it a good sign that this guy is taking his time? Is that a good sign for Tennessee, that this is taking a little bit of time, or is that a bad sign? I'm going to force you to completely read into it.
This is going to sound like I'm cavaliersing the question, but
man.
I'm not. So hang on before you react to it. Look, this has only been a couple of days, and he said we're going to have a ruling in short order. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the legalese is in short order.
Yeah.
Is that 7 days? Is that 2 weeks? What does that mean? Only because, so that is an unknown, but because I think Tennessee is ultimately going to win this, I say it is still a positive because in the end, I think Tennessee will prevail in this.
I think that it's no news is good news. I absolutely do. Because if Tennessee had not made a compelling argument that they have a right to have this injunction, it's over that quickly.
Yes,
so
agreed.
for me, no news is good news here. Now, does that mean it's a slam dunk? Because Judge Clifton Corker has to know that the toothpaste isn't going back in the tube. This injunction happens, there is no more NCAA oversight of NIL. So he's probably looking at it all and doing his due diligence, but I think no news is good news so far.
I agree. I think that if Tennessee had blown this, if the Attorney General had blown this, they're asking for the injunction. I think it would have been very simple to say, no, here's a piece of paper that says no, get out. Whereas the taking time tells me he might be writing something up that says yes. I have no idea. We're just guessing. Jimmy, your thoughts on this?
I'm going to say it's a good sign because Judge Corker has had time to realize the NCAA never wins a court case. And so he's not going to go against that tradition.
Yeah, we talked about this on radio. This is the interesting thing. And Judge Corker could be one of three things. He could be the guy who's like, well, let's put it this way. You've seen the movie Miracle on 34th Street where the judge is forced into saying whether or not there's a Santa Claus. This isn't completely different from that in that if he says, yeah, death to the NCAA in terms of NIL rules, that's 500,000 athletes and the 1,000 schools that are impacted all by your decision. I may wait on that and I'll handle it in the court case and not do an injunction. At the other hand, he may be the type of guy who would want to shy away from that and be cautious and we'll do it later. He may be the kind of guy who's like, I can bring down the NCAA. Or he may just be a strict legal mind who is, I'm looking at the validity of the case. I don't care about the other stuff. We don't know. I don't know the guy. But I can see where there's no way personality, it shouldn't play a role, but it could with any judge, with anybody. I mean, whether or not you want that burden of being the guy who tore it all up if it goes off the rails for 6 months before it goes to trial, or you may say, hell yeah, I want to be the guy that people remember. Clifton Corker took down the NCAA. I don't know. But
something to watch for. I think that because the NCAA still hasn't charged Tennessee with anything, right? They've just leaked the information out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tennessee gets the injunction. I don't think this thing ever goes to court. I don't think the NCAA ever charges them. I was told by someone in the legal field this week, the NCAA had 11 lawyers at that hearing that made $25,000 per hour. That is a lot of money for this thing to go to court, and you have to continue to pay them.
And we think Tennessee's fiscally responsible.
And they have a lot of other lawsuits as well that the NCAA is dealing with, too. And just to be clear to our listeners and our viewers, this is not like the end of the case.
Right.
This is just one step, the injunction.
Exactly. This is the injunction which would give immediate relief. This would kill it immediately as opposed to we're going to let this thing go to trial in 6 months or whenever that starts.
Right.
Well, here's the crazy thing. So let's say he provides the injunction, and all these schools go out and take advantage of NIL, and then another court overturns it, and then the NCAA retroactively punishes everybody.
You knew better.
They
Yeah.
never retroactive anything.
Yeah, that's right. All right. When we come back, there's talk of expanding the NCAA tournament. There's talk of adding a 2-minute warning to college football. Goody. Let's slow down the game even more. Let's add more commercials. When we come back, I'll let these guys tell you whether or not they like these decisions or whether or not just leave well enough alone, people. That's next on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems, East Tennessee's most trusted name in security systems for your home or your business. VFL J.J. Surlis and his team have protected people's property all over East Tennessee for more than 20 years. And if you're sitting there right now saying, I don't need a security system, do yourself a favor. Go to YouTube, search doorbell cam nightmares. It will talk you into getting a security system, I promise. Safety Systems, so you go when you need one. They do a great job. Get in touch with them this week, safetysystems.com. One last reminder for this poll we want you to play along with. If we can get that up there, you go. Oh, boy. Come on now. Somebody's got to fight. There's been a little movement down there on the regular season championship. Somebody's pushed a button or two. But, boy, that's a rout. More people care about a deep NCAA tournament run. Not that I'm surprised, but this will teach the people on Twitter not to argue. All right. All the arguments will stop on Twitter now. All right, here we go. We got
Get them in that place.
yeah, we got two guys right over here, Jimmy and Vince. We got two guys over here, Dave and Chuck. I got one question for each of you. Rule changes that have been coming, or changes to sports that have come up this week. Jimmy and Vince, I'll start with you. NCAA officials will soon be debating the merits of adding a 2-minute warning to college football, so that all of the late game rules that take effect in the last few days, they would all take effect at the same time. The clock stops with a first down, the 10-second runoffs for penalties, all that would just start at the 2-minute warning. Instead of this is the last 2 minutes, this is the last minute, so they would just move it to 2 minutes. Is this a good idea to have a 2-minute warning and add it to college football and put all those clock rules there at that one spot? Or leave well enough alone?
Do you want us to huddle up and then we'll come together with one answer?
I think we got a better question.
Your mic, so everyone will still hear you. I just can't. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jay.
I would leave it alone. And one of the things about college football, one of the concerns they've had lately is the length of a game, right?
Yes.
Aren't you adding more time to a game if you do this? So you'd go from the old 3 hours and 45-minute games to 3:55 or whatever. So I would leave it alone.
It's contrary to what they're trying to accomplish in shortening games because it looks like it's a spot to insert commercials. And you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
I don't see the great benefit for that.
Here's the thing there. I think it'll happen because it is a chance to add commercials. But what's silly is they're like, well, if you had a 2-minute warning, you could start all those clock rules at 2 minutes. Well, you already start the first down. The clock stops with the first down in the last 2 minutes. That changed last year. So you're already doing that. You don't need a 2-minute warning just to say penalties and injuries from this point on will result in a 10-second runoff. Just do that at 2 minutes. You don't have to have a commercial break to do that.
Right.
So, so the fact that they're looking at it that way makes me think they're smart enough to know this is just about commercial.
Well, in the out of bounds, if you ran out of bounds at a certain point, there's a difference in when they start and restart that clock.
Yeah, you can do all that at 2 minutes. You just don't have a 2-minute timeout for the commercials. All right, let's talk basketball. Dave Hooker, Chuck Cavaliers. Your question is as follows. The commissioners of the ACC and the Big 12 told Yahoo Sports this week that it might be time to expand the NCAA tournament. Apparently they want more of their teams in the tournament, so they'll get additional cash, of course, that comes with extra bids. You good with expanding the NCAA tournament or leave well enough alone?
We go first, Chuck?
Have at it, Dave.
All right. There are certain perfect numbers in sports. 64 was one of them. I know it's 68 now. Yeah. That was all great. Let's just roll with that. There was no need in increasing it whatsoever. And what I'm afraid of, Chuck, is they're not going to increase from 64 to 68 to 78. I'm afraid they're going to double the thing and make it 120 teams in there.
Wow.
And I've read that as a possibility. It's clearly a money-making scheme.
Right.
I don't want to be.
See, I don't
part
even
of that.
know about the logistics. Even if you did go to 96, I don't know about the logistics.
Adding another weekend.
Yeah. So, but you know, the television executives would say yes, and the mid-majors would say yes. Right now, the ACC is projected to have 4 teams in NCAA tournament. The SEC is 9. Some of and plus with the conference realignment, everything's just kind of. I think they're just saying let's just cool it. You got one of the best things in sports. People filling out brackets. Why Why not just right now mess with that just now?
There's a part of me that would like to see him go to 128, so
I'm
I
sorry,
could
Jimmy,
hear
this isn't your question.
the 129 team is going to be complaining. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that's
You're
right.
129. Well, I should have been 128.
Oh,
I
you're
should
going
be
to
in
get
the
it
field.
football with the number 13 team this year.
Yeah.
This is the NCAA's money-making scheme to offset all the lawsuits that they're dealing with.
This is how they pay for their attorneys. That's right. We're going to add on. The thing that would be interesting is if all these Power 5 commissioners who are trying to get their bottom feeder programs into the tournament had to sit there and watch those new bids go to more mid-majors. That would be ironic. That would be very good.
And I might not be opposed to more play-in games without actually affecting them.
But see, it's a tournament game.
Right.
Here's the thing. I'm all for it if you take about 10 games off the regular season. 20 years ago, you started basketball right at Thanksgiving. Now you're starting it at Halloween.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that. Stop it. Well, there is a reason for that.
Money.
Right.
They can get people over to Food City Center, Thompson Bowling Arena, whatever they want to call it, for UNC Asheville, and that's why they do it. But to me, if you want to do this, everybody cares about the tournament. You see it right there. Expand the tournament if you want, but decrease the regular season.
And that's probably not going to happen.
No, that won't happen because they'd be leaving money on the table.
But when we look at this, if it is just a money-making scheme, are we sure that the public is going to buy into this? I don't know anybody that gets excited and calls me on a Tuesday night and says, "Ooh, those first 4 games are happening."
Oh, this would be another weekend, though. If you added this more teams, you're adding a whole other weekend to it.
But are you still filling out your bracket with 64? Are you still
It'd be an awfully
thinking
big
of it?
bracket.
I know. Are you still thinking of it as the 64? I wonder if the public will just accept it like that.
I think sports fans, for the most part, we are sheep.
I would probably accept it.
You got to do something. I mean, look at all the NFL changes, and the numbers just keep going up.
They give them something else to bet on, too.
Hey, that's
There
an
you go.
idea.
There you go. There it is. There it is. When we come back, Texas Athletic Director Chris Del Conte expects the SEC to move to a 9-game schedule. Is he right? And will ESPN have the money to help make that happen? They didn't before. Will they need to chip in to get that done? Come on back on the Sports Source. We'll discuss a 9-game SEC schedule. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. We're just a couple of weeks from March Madness, folks. Conference tournaments, the NCAA tournament. Then you get baseball, the Masters, NASCAR. It's your time for sports viewing. This is a great time for sports viewing. And that means it's time to make your sports viewing as wonderful as possible. That requires new home theater seating from Games and Things. Nobody has a better selection of home theater seats, bigger selection, better selection than Games and Things. Get down and see for yourself. You can park yourself in several of their test models right there in their beautiful big showroom. OurGameRoom.com to learn more. But get down to their showroom at the corner of Kingston Pike and Lovell Road next week. Games and Things, because life should be fun. All right, let's take a look at results of the poll. Not a surprise, although we did have a late push. People trying to prove me wrong with the SEC regular season title. 11% of you say that's what matters this season, win the regular season. 3% of you, we're on different planets. You would rather have the SEC tournament title than the regular season title or a deep NCAA run. But 86% of you say deep NCAA run. We thank you for playing as always. All right, 9 games on the horizon. Here's a quote from Chris Del Conte, Texas Athletic Director. We have 8-game schedule right now. We're working on going to a 9-game schedule, but we have a ways to go with that. I would say this year we have an 8-game schedule. The following year we have another 8-game schedule. Then we'll look at going into a 9-game conference schedule. Okay, that has been taken to mean they're going to 9 because he says we'll be going into. I took it to mean it's still up for debate. So, and I know that the SEC wants more cash. ESPN just signed an extension for the first 6 years of the expanded playoff, $7.8 billion. So that's $7.8 billion. They have fewer dollars to give to the SEC for more SEC versus SEC games. Is Chris Del Conte going to learn that the cowards rule in this conference and we're staying at 8 because we'd rather back into a bowl or schedule our way into a bowl than play each other on the field? What happens?
Yeah, I don't think they go to 9 because I don't think ESPN's going to give them more money. I just think that they lose 8 total games of inventory that they would be able to have advertising for to get better games. I think there's also this concern. It's not the Chattanooga and the Charleston Southern game going away if you go to 9 conference games. It's Alabama versus Florida State. LSU versus Florida, Wisconsin. Those are the games I think that people are concerned will go away, and they'll still play, so it'll be like Michigan last year. 9 conference games, 3 cupcakes, and done. That's what I don't want to see.
Michigan was the exception, and typically Michigan plays somebody good.
They do.
So I would like to see the SEC schedule like the Big Ten, and people can sit there and say to me, well, the Big Ten isn't as good as the SEC. Was last year.
Yeah.
I don't like the Big Ten, but at least they schedule one another.
Yeah.
I wish the SEC would just man up and do that, but I don't think they will. Do you think they'll go to a 9-game schedule?
I don't think they will, because I think when they were talking about it, why are we adding a game without getting compensated for it? It really didn't make any sense. And why are you taking a chance on going on the road to play a night game at Auburn? Doesn't matter who you are. That can be a tough place to play. When it's just one more chance to lose a game when you can schedule around that. That's just the way that they look at it to me.
Yeah, they'd rather play Charleston Southern at home than go on the road to Ole Miss.
Right. I think that there was really movement to go to 9, Dave, and then I think they started talking about, we're not getting paid for it. Why do it?
I think there are a couple of reasons to do it. One, I think we would all agree SEC football versus SEC football is better on a Saturday than Coastal Carolina. Or
far better.
So, I mean, just the product is so much better. And I think when you get into this 12-team playoff, you're going to see that if you're from one of the major conferences and you go 9-3 or 10-2, you got a pretty good chance to make the college football playoff. You're in the hunt, and that's what people want to hear. So I don't have a problem, as much as I typically don't like patsy games, I don't have a problem with 3 patsy games if they went to 9, because then everybody's held to the same standard of they have to play 9 conference games. So if you get to that 10 win, you're in. That's the way I would like for it to play out. Whether or not it will play out that way is a totally different
I'd
argument.
like to see everybody play 10 good games a year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That would be,
I'm down.
yes,
I'm down.
That would be the way I'd like to see it. I don't really care how you get there, as long as you're playing 10 good games a year. The other thing to watch out for these ADs, every other year you lose a home game if you do that. And that's between $2 and $4 million a year that you might be losing by losing that home game.
Yeah, and
I just think it's funny that these other leagues did it.
Yeah, and they were fine. And,
they just
one of
won
them
the
makes more
national
money.
title.
Yeah.
And definitely not to interrupt, but talking to Jacob Warren and Cooper Mace, as I do regularly, those patsy games are almost as much of an off week as a bye week. Because you know going into it, you're going to handle Southwest Missouri, Alabama State, whatever the case may be. And you get a half off of that game on game day, too. Yeah. They make a big difference, so you're asking a lot more if we start to get into more difficult games.
The only thing all of our VFLs that do our show in the fall, the only thing they say is a benefit is the guys who don't normally play get a shot to play. But anybody who is playing doesn't look forward to those games. They don't like those games. They're meaningless.
Oh, so
I could go out and blow my knee against.
Can I ask one quick question?
No, but go ahead.
Okay. How many automatic bids are there with the expanded playoffs?
There will be 5, the conference.
So is that 6 or 7 at large?
7.
7. So you got 7 at large. I don't think a 3-loss team can automatically feel like they're going to get in.
No. Not automatically.
Not remotely.
No.
I just hope, look, if I prefer the SEC to the Big Ten, but if the Big Ten is scheduling better and the SEC is doing the 8-game thing, and it comes down to 2 teams that have the exact same record, and one of them played 9 conference games and one of them played 8, I hope the Big Ten team gets in. I hope the SEC has to sit there and go, oh, but wait, we're tougher. We played 8. Yeah, I don't care. You played Gudger Tech. Yeah. I'm not going to give you credit for it. You can sit there and say, well, they just played Northwestern. Beats Charleston Southern. To me, I don't like the cowardly way out. And part of it is these ADs also saying, at Kentucky or wherever, maybe Tennessee, we need to schedule this way to get into a bowl, which I really hate. But anyway, I don't think the NCAA is listening to me.
I would love for somebody to explain to me how the Pac-12 is just automatically going to have a bid. And the last time I checked it,
Well, that's just it. It's going away.
Yeah, Will and I think have as many Pac-12 teams as they do now. So I'm trying to figure out how that works.
Yeah, it's going to go.
All you got to do is flip a coin heads.
That's where it's going from 6 to 5.
Why get somebody hurt? You made it.
All right. When we come back, over/under, the gambling services have set the over/under win totals for SEC teams. We'll show you Tennessee. We'll show you all the teams that are 7.5 or more. We'll make our picks against those. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. Man, we are behind this segment brought to you by Pipe Wrench. Heating, cooling, plumbing, drain cleaning. When you run into an issue in your home, it's a good bet Pipe Wrench can fix it for you. And if they don't make it on the day you call, well, the visit is free. You can't beat that with a stick or a pipe. How about that? PipeWrench.com to learn more. Drain cleaning, plumbing, heating, cooling. PipeWrench.com. We appreciate them being a part of the Sports Source. All right. Speaking of good bets, the gambling services have put out their over-under win totals for the SEC this year. I've got Chuck Cavalier standing by at the big board, and I think we've got one more. We can take the graphic off, I guess, because we've got one more to show down there. We need to do this quickly. So what we're going to do, Georgia's a 10.5 over-under. That's their win total for the year. Chuck, yes or no? Where are you going, over or under?
You can't go over. I mean, you can't go under on Georgia. I'm taking them over to like 11-1, 12-0.
Okay, over. Vince, you got Texas, 10.5 wins.
I will go, first year in the SEC, I would go under, I think just a touch under.
Agreed. Okay, that's an under. Then we got Dave Hooker with Alabama. Alabama down to a 9.5 on the over-under.
Wow.
Give me a 7.5 teaser, and I'll go under. And I'll
So
go
you're going
under.
9 over. We don't have time. What are you going to
Under.
Over. You're going under a 9.5.
I am.
Really?
I
Okay.
think the program falls apart this year.
Wow. Okay.
Will West doesn't.
All right. Will West, Ole Miss, 9.5. The genius, Lane Kiffin.
I think under. I think that when you see them win 10 games, there's going to be a drop off the next
LSU
year.
or Ole Miss?
Oh, I thought you said Ole Miss.
I did say Ole Miss.
Yeah,
It's Ole Miss.
I think LSU's going to have a good year. Over.
No, we're doing Ole Miss. I said Ole Miss.
Oh, Ole
first.
Miss. Okay, Ole
Under.
Miss under.
Gotta love television. All right. So Jimmy, LSU, over or under? And they're at 9.5 as well.
Under, they don't have Jaden Daniels.
Okay. Hopefully he'll be in Foxborough. Next is Missouri, Chuck, 9.5.
There has to be a little bit of a drop-off, doesn't it? I'm going to go under the 9.5.
I think they were last year's Tennessee, and I think this year they'll do what Tennessee did last year. So I would go under as well. All right, next we have Tennessee. Vince, 8.5 is the win total for Tennessee. Over or under?
I'm going to go over, not drastic.
Elite Eight?
Yeah. At least.
4.
No, I will go over on Tennessee.
Okay, over. Then we got Dave. You got Texas A&M, 8.5.
Texas A&M, I will take the slight over.
I would take the under. Okay. So he takes over.
That's the one I didn't.
I'm
Mike
perfect
Elko.
so far, John.
And Mike Elko. Oklahoma, Will. They at 7.5. 7.5, the over-under for Oklahoma.
I'm going to take the under. First year in the SEC, I think you made a horrible mistake with your offensive coordinator hires after you lost your lost Levy. They bringing in another transfer quarterback to start. Give me the under.
Yeah, the loss of Gabriel's a big one. All right. Auburn, Jimmy, 7.5.
Under. They have not improved themselves at quarterback.
Okay.
All right.
Under. All right, so we got over 10.5 for Georgia, under 10.5 for Texas A&M, for Texas, Alabama under 9.5, LSU under 9.5, Missouri under 9.5. Oh, what a homer show. Under, Tennessee, over. All right, so let's just, Chuck, you can join us over here. Let me ask these guys, did they get it right with Tennessee at an 8.5? Is that where you would put the over-under line?
I would.
Is 8.5 the right spot for it?
Yeah.
8-9 range, yeah, absolutely.
I don't think so. I would have had it at 9.
It's got to have the half.
Got to do
Gotta
that.
I know you gotta have the half.
gotta
But this
have the
makes
half.
it more complicated. Which would you take, the 10 or the 8?
I don't believe in the push.
That's right. So you got to have the half.
I
would you be,
okay,
9.5?
if you made me go 8.5 or 9.5, I would go 9.5.
Okay. So you think, it's a little under. All right.
Just a little bit.
So you're high on them Vols.
I'm high on them Vols. I'm high on some guy named Nico.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe high on something else.
I can get you a promo code for that.
Anybody else? The surprise here to me is Alabama dropping all the way to now 9.5. I mean, with the national
that's a
betting crew, I'm a
surprise.
little surprised. I'm also surprised that Oklahoma's at
Oklahoma,
7.5.
that was going to be mine.
A&M at 8.5 too. I mean, you wouldn't hire Kmart Mark Stoops, so why in the world would I think that this is going to work out? That doesn't,
Mark
that doesn't make any sense
I
to
hate
me.
that the two I feel best about are the two you said that you feel most concerned about. It's Alabama.
Yeah, well, there you go. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to you for watching every week. Josh Ward will be hosting next week, so tune in and watch that. It'll be a good show for once. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. Come on back on the Sports Source then.